He's from another land. Scotland. What's Scotland? He sounds like he's not from the States.
Scotch Kale Podcast.
Welcome to the Scotch Kale Podcast, sponsored by absolutely nobody. If you haven't done it yet, go to that subscribe button, hit it to follow the Scotch Kale Podcast. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is my first podcast back being in Scotland. If you were looking at my Facebook page, you would have saw that I didn't post a podcast last week because I was travelling back to Scotland. So, the Scotch Kale Podcast is actually in Scotland for once, which is nice. I will be back here for about 6 months in total before I go back out to America. So for the next little while, the podcast will be coming to you from Scotland. I was thinking, what did I actually want to do with the podcast going forward? As you can tell, I'm by myself today. My good friend Sky Thunderbolt, who was in many of the podcasts before, is obviously still back in the States, and everyone else who'd been on so far is still back in the States. Now, I do have a load of good friends and family that I think would like to be on the podcast, which I'm sure in time will happen. But I thought I was going to go in a slightly new, cool direction, at least over the next couple of weeks. The reason I was thinking about this change was I was recently watching the movie Spider-Man Far From Home. And obviously Scotland is my home, but I've been in the States for so long now that I kind of consider Ohio my home. And coming back here, I thought it was kind of a nice, way to kind of go into this next thing that we're going to be doing, which is picking the best Marvel movie of all time. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to be doing overall the best movie of all time. However, I have been told by multiple people that they find it really hard to pick one particular movie when you've got all these different genres, like comedy, action, adventure, romance. It's really hard to kind of narrow that down to pick one particular movie. So if you listened and you kind of looked on Facebook, you'll have saw that the last poll, which was between The Shawshank Redemption and Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump came out victorious, so our current champion for the overall title is Forrest Gump. Now, rather than having guests on and multiple people of them picking Marvel movies, which honestly the Marvel movies are very good, don't know if I'd necessarily say they're the best of all time, but somebody might think so. Rather than multiple people coming on for that, we are going to determine a challenger for the Forrest Gump through this way. Now, I will still pick a challenger at the end of this episode, but it means in a couple of weeks' time we'll have a brand new challenger voted by you guys. Then that kind of keeps your participation up. So the way we're going to do it, in the kind of Marvel Cinematic Universe, there's 23 movies. So that doesn't really work. So I have included the movie Deadpool, which doesn't kind of fall in the kind of phases that Marvel did, but I wanted it to be a even number. So, and I know that Deadpool's a very popular movie, so Deadpool's been included in that 24. And just for reference for everyone, the 24 movies that will be voted between are Iron Man, which is the first one, The Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor, Captain America, the First Avenger, Marvel's The Avengers, Iron Man 3, Thor, The Dark World, Captain America, The Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy, Avengers, Age of Ultron, Ant-Man, Captain America, Civil War, Doctor Strange, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Spider-Man Homecoming, Thor Ragnarok, Black Panther, Avengers Infinity War, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Captain Marvel, Avengers Endgame, Spider-Man Far From Home, and finally Deadpool. Now that's a lot of movies, ranging from the most recent, which was July this year, Spider-Man Far From Home, which is the end of Phase 3 of the Marvel saga, and the very first one was Iron Man 1, which came out in 2008. So there's 11 years worth of movies here. I know they're very, very popular, and there's a few of them that are up there with the most grossing movies of all time. So it's hard not to argue their place amongst the greatest movies of all time. The draft and kind of the tournament is going to be done over a couple of weeks. So I don't want to be putting out polls constantly. So what we're going to do is this next coming week will be one side of the draft, and there will be 12 teams in total. So the 12 teams that had been done by my draft generator that will be included are Captain America versus Doctor Strange, Black Panther versus Ant-Man, Captain Marvel versus Thor the Dark World, Iron Man 2 versus Avengers Age of Ultron, Iron Man 3 versus Spider-Man Far From Home, and finally Deadpool versus Thor. So that will be the every day in this next coming week. There'll be a new poll up, and we'll go from there. So this is obviously going to go over the next couple of weeks, and we'll do rounds, and we'll determine at the very end a new challenger, and at the end of it have what you guys think is the best Marvel movie ever, which I think is going to be quite fun. Personally, not to be biased, but I like to vote in these things too, but my favourite Marvel movie is probably Thor Ragnarok. And that's purely because I really, really like Chris Hemsworth. I think he does a fantastic job. I think although he's kind of this shredded guy, he's also the most relatable to men in our current society. And I think, he's a really good role model for younger people to look up to. And I've always been really interested in kind of the Greek gods. So Thor has always been a personal favourite of mine, and Chris Hemsworth and his comedy just makes it even better. So I know when the votes come up, that'll kind of be who my votes are going to. I think this is going to be a really good opportunity to get you guys involved, to get your thoughts on these different movies. Feel free to leave comments in the video and make sure you're commenting on the Facebook page. I want to know, because Marvel movies is something that has really interested me for a long time. I'm a big superhero fan, and I am very much Marvel over DC. I honestly haven't watched very many of the DC movies, so the chances of me doing that in the future are very unlikely. The next kind of genre that I want to go into, I want to make this kind of a more reoccurring, where I go into genres and then we kind of narrow it down from a tournament pool, and they end up going against the movie that's in the lead right now. So Forrest Gump's going to stay where it is right now, and we'll do a challenger for me, but then going forward it's going to be we'll wait until the new challenger comes forward from the end of the Marvel. And the next one I want to do is comedy movies, the best comedy movie of all time. So once we're wrapped up with Marvel, that's what we're going to go on to. I would really, really like your suggestions for the best comedy movies of all time. Obviously, with Marvel, it's really easy for me just to find all the movies, and we do a vote that way. Comedy movies, there's hundreds and hundreds out there. So if you have a favourite comedy movie, what I want you to do is I want you to comment below, and the ones with the most votes will get put into the end up poll. And then if I don't have 24, which is what we're going to do, then it'll end up being that I pick the rest of them. So that might become a little bit biased, which is why I want you guys involved. So hopefully you guys do that. If there's any other genres of movies that you guys are interested in me looking at, then feel free to let me know. I think this is kind of a better way to do it, because it gives people, especially guests that come on as well, it'll give them something more to talk about. They can potentially nominate something for a movie for the category coming up, which will make it a lot easier, because some of my guests in the past have really struggled to pick a movie just in general because there's so many to pick from. The next thing I want to talk about is a movie that came out very recently. Now, I haven't actually seen it yet, but I've been following the news around it, and I want to kind of get people's opinions on it. So the brand new movie The Joker came out with Joaquin Phoenix playing the Joker, and faced a lot of backlash from the media and the general public. Now, a big part of the reason is that the last Batman movie that came out was The Dark Knight Rises, and there were several shootings that happened in movie theatres with multiple losses of life. Now, I know some of the families came forward when they saw the trailer for this new Joker movie, and they were really unhappy about the amount of violence and kind of recklessness of the movie. And I think it's a really interesting talking point, because modern movies are very much becoming more and more realistic, and that's potentially a problem for movies going forward. A lot of the really cool things, for example, with Marvel movies, is that they're so unrealistic that the violence in them doesn't quite seem as bad, because you know that Thor is not real, and he's not going to swing his magic hammer and take out an army that way, and you know that Bruce Banner is not going to turn into the Hulk and start breaking things up in New York, and you know that there's not going to be monsters coming from the sky and attacking. So even though there's a lot of violence in those movies, it doesn't quite fit the same as what the Joker, this recent Joker movie, is doing, because it is a very kind of real looking situation that could happen. And from the trailers that I've watched and some of the interviews that I watched recently, I can kind of understand why people are unhappy about it. And my question for you guys is, do you think that movies should, if they have violence in them, should be so unrealistic that we know that it would never happen? What are your thoughts on it? Because I can understand what's going on and what the problem is. I personally would like to see less guns in movies, which is why, again, kind of superhero movies tend to be some of my favourite movies. I don't like to see such violence on the screen, because especially with the new generations coming up, we're very much based on social media. Everything we see movies on, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all these things are forming the new generation. And the more violence that we show people, the more potentially damaging it can be. And movie makers can have a really big influence in that. It could be for the good or for the bad. And the way that cinema is going with the amount of violence that it's showing and normalizing violence, and kind of showing that, all this violence has happened, at the end of the day, someone's going to come to the rescue, it's not necessarily the best message to be sending, I don't think. But like I said, I'd like to get your opinions on this. One of the things I've been focused on recently is self-care and taking care of myself a little bit more, and that has resulted in me doing some more reading. And this is just something that I've been reading up about, and it's something I'd like to incorporate into the podcast a little bit more, is talking about something a little bit more serious and kind of getting the listeners' contributions, saying what you think, because it's something that's really important. And the more, obviously this is on a social media platform, the more that people are talking and making their opinions clear, then the more we shape the generation that's to come. So please let me know what your viewpoints on it, what you think could be done, or if you think that it's totally okay because it's in the movie. Nobody's right or wrong, because everyone's entitled to their opinion, so I'd love to hear from you. Now, the final thing I'm going to do on this episode is obviously pick the challenger for right now to go against Forrest Gump. Now, Forrest Gump obviously is an American classic, and a lot of people that I work with in the States voted for it. It is a fantastic movie. I will still stand by my love for Shawshank Redemption. I think it was hard done by a little bit, but you, the people, are entitled to your opinions, so I will not question that. Now, movie I'm going to go for is actually a superhero movie, and it's very much related to the previous talk that I was talking about, the Joker. I'm going to pick Batman The Dark Knight. Now, it may be a slightly controversial pick to some people because obviously it's a superhero movie and there's lots of these timeless classics out there. However, I think it's arguably one of the best movies ever made, and I'd argue with a lot of people that it has one of the best movie characters of all time. And that goes to Heath Ledger's Joker. I honestly think that Heath Ledger's Joker is the greatest villain in cinematic history. I can watch his performance all day long, and it's just unfortunate that his passing meant that he wouldn't be able to play the Joker again, because I don't think anyone comes close to the performance that he puts in. Not only does it have the amazing performance, but it has a fantastic cast with Christian Bale playing Batman. You have Michael Caine, who plays Alfred. You have Gary Oldman, who's in there as well. And then you have Aaron Eckhart as Harvey Dent. So it's a fantastic cast that really drives the movie, and there isn't much else I need to say about it. So that's going to be my choice for the greatest movie of all time, the Batman Dark Knight versus Forrest Gump. I want to thank you all for listening in this time round. I hope you all enjoyed the episode, and I hope you all get voting on your favourite Marvel movie of all time. I will see you very soon. This has been the Scotch Kale Podcast. Goodbye.